Hi guys, it's Brandon from Team Ragnarok. This time I'm bringing you a deck profile from my top 8 at the London Shop Challenge. I decided to play Nubatama for the event and I was very happy with the result. Let's get into the profile. So first I played 4 Hanzo. This card is absolutely amazing. It's a good first ride. It gets me with the setups that I need. It's a good first ride. It's a good second ride. It's just a very solid card. What it allows me to do is act. I can choose 2 grade zeros. I can retire them, and I can choose any number of rear guards on either side of the board, and I can bounce them back to the owner's hand. And if my opponent is on grade 3, they have to discard the same number of cards from hand to the number that I bounce back. This card combos really well with another card that I'm running, and I'll get into that in a second. But it's just really nice against things like Vanquisher or Aqua Force that let you swarm early, and you just bounce their majority of their board back, or sometimes even the whole of their board. And this has 2 results normally. Either they discard what you've bounced back and save for the defense, or they will discard more of their defensive cards, meaning either way, yes, they might build that board back up the following turn, but they then don't have defenses, meaning they have to take more damage. They're left more open, and meaning that it will make it easier for you to do your combos and push, and you're still making them discard and minus from hand. Then I play 4 of Congo. This card, in my opinion, is the best grade 3 in the deck. This is more for kind of later game. You more want to go into this for your second grade 3 and kind of sit on it. This kind of allows you to kind of stall out the game a little bit, really weaken your opponent, and then kind of push for another hand zone and a combo that I'll go through later. What this allows you to do is on place, your opponent has to, on place or at the end of each turn, your opponent has to discard down to 6 cards in hand. But if you have a grade 3 in your soul, they have to discard down to 4 instead of the 6. So this card is absolutely amazing. I got paired up against Vanquisher quite a lot today, and it is definitely my go-to ride, because Vanquisher gets a lot of cards in hand. It can build its hand back up, and for decks that build a big hand size, especially from Claret, from Revon, and all sorts. This card just allows you to have complete control of the board state and your opponent's hand. Absolutely amazing card in my opinion. Then the last grade 3 I run is 2 of this guy. Now this guy, he's very situational, but in my opinion, he is useful. I would say at least try to build with him. What he does is he's an act on Vanguard Rearguard. I can Soul Blast 3 and discard 2 Sentinels from my hand. He gains 15k, and he basically bounces all of my opponent's rearguards back to their hand. And then if 1 or more were returned, my opponent discards 5. So what the combo is you'd combo this with Hanzo. So you'll be on Hanzo. You'll use Hanzo to, say if your opponent had 5 rearguards, you'd use Hanzo to bounce 4 of them back. Then you would, so then they have to discard 4 from that alone. Then you would go use this, Soul Blast 3, discard 2 Sentinels, to then go bounce that last card. So you've given them 1 card in hand, but then they have to discard 5. and normally that will close out games. Normally, if you've sat on this the turn previous, they'll be on 4 cards in hand. So you then go into this, make them bounce their board back, make them discard 4, and then do this to make them just ditch their hand, and normally that is just enough to close out the game. But this is a very situational card, and it does depend on how aggro your opponent is being against you. I definitely think it's a solid card. On to grade 2s. I play 4 of this guy. Sorry, I'm not pronouncing the names. I'm not even going to try with some of these. But this guy is a nice play starter. He is helpful for Hanzo because unfortunately the only thing with Hanzo is it doesn't generate grade 0s itself like the decoy tokens. And this card is basically one of the cards that allows you to generate them. So what this card does is it's an act. You can counterblast 1 and call a decoy token, and then all of your decoy tokens gain 5k in boost. The important thing about this is it's not once per turn. So this, for 2 counterblasts, just allows you to set up for Hanzo. The second skill is if it would be targeted for an attack, you can redirect the attack to a decoy token to bounce this back to your hand, so that it won't, if you don't have another one in hand, you can just reuse it next turn and it's not really a threat of your opponent getting rid of it. But that doesn't really come up too much. It's mainly just because it's one of your main ways of generating tokens. Next grade 2 is Gale. Now this card, I've seen a lot of mixed opinions on this card. I have to say it is a really good card in my opinion, just for the Vanguard Rearguard skill, which is when it's placed, you can Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, he gains 6k and you get to draw a card. So during the day, I found that this would be my main ride target. It would sometimes help me fix my hands, but most importantly, if I went up against a force matchup, it would help me hit a number over force. So it would hit 15, meaning they couldn't just 15k, for 1. They would have to kind of dedicate more to it if they really wanted to stop a rush. So I just found it incredibly useful, and I thought it was really nice against Vanquisher as well, because it just gets me a draw, it gets me a card in hand. Basically just allows me to refund for riding it, which is also great in Protect. Its second skill is at the end of the battle it attacked, I can move it into Soul and choose a rearguard and bounce it to hand. This didn't really come up too often, to be honest, because if I'm playing against something like Vanquisher, I normally just rode this and then used other things instead, just because of how the matches went. But if you're playing something against something like Kagero, this would definitely be more useful, or even something that has a little bit of spot removal like Royals. But I definitely think this card is a really good grade 2. Next card that I run is the Soul Charger of the deck, as I like to call it. This card helped me so much today. It helped me against Vanquisher and most of my other matchups, to be honest. What this card does is, on place on rearguard, I can choose a unit and give it 3k. If I chose a grade 3 unit, I can Soul Charge 1. So it's just nice to kind of just make your Vanguard 15k if need be, which again is good against Force. But the main thing for this is you can cheese the Soul Charge, and this deck uses a lot of Soul. So say for example, you've had to ride Gemikongo first ride, and you've limited them to 6. There was a game today where I called this, used the skill, and I Soul Charged a grade 3. So I had, I could just afford to sit on that without having to really worry. The other skill is at the end of the battle, the attack, you can Soul Blast 1 and bounce this to hand. So it allows you to keep reusing it, get that soul, power up your Vanguard, and basically just doesn't allow Vanquisher to have anything to target in your front row. Next card that I run, which I wasn't a big fan of originally, but looking at how it did today, I have started to like it a lot more. So what this card says is when it attacks a Vanguard, if I called 2 or more grade 0 units this turn, it gains 5k, and then at the end of the battle I can move it into Soul and countercharge 1. What I love about this is it hits 14. So it automatically hits a better number against Force, and it just allows me to countercharges, and it puts itself into Soul, so I'm getting a countercharge, a card in Soul, and something that can hit over Force. So I think the card is good. It can be useful when I go for game, when I try and go for Hanzo. I just think it's a really nice card. Going on to grade 1s. Now, this grade 1, in my opinion, is the best grade 1 of the deck. And it's also your main token generation. This was the card that I used most during the day to generate my tokens because it just felt so free. This allows you to act Vanguard, Rearguard, to Soul Blast 2, bounce it back to your hand and get 2 tokens. This is really good. The fact that it's a 1 card to generate 2 is really, really handy. You may think that it can affect the grade 3 combo, and sometimes it can, but this deck can just really stall when it wants to. That I didn't really have an issue. The main target in this deck, the main thing you want to do is just make sure that your opponent, you make it as awkward for your opponent as possible. So it was more important to use this, and it was less, to worry about the chicken, because you do have ways of soul charging. Next, for this, to be honest, if you've played Kagura or Narukami, this is just a Sable Newt or Demolition Dragon. Vanguard on hit allows you to draw a card. Its other skill is if you have a grade 0 Rearguard, it gains 5k. So again, we just use it for the on hit pressure of going second to draw a card. And then, for later push behind Vanguard or a Rearguard, if I need it, it can just become a 13k booster, which again is really nice against the Force matchups. And then I play a little bit of Spice. I was thinking of changing this, but it did help me clutch some games. So this is a card that I don't see a lot of Nuba players playing, and I can kind of see why, but at the same time it did help, especially during this format, I think. What it says is, when my grade 3 unit attacks, I can counterblast 1 and retire this unit, and my opponent can't guard with Sentinels for that attack. I felt that when I was going for my end of game combo, if I didn't have the chicken, but I could do Hanzo and make them discard a lot, Hanzo gains 20k itself from its skill. So this just went extra pressure. Oh, you're on 4, you're on 5, you can't guard with Sentinels for this. Or if I did get to do the full combo, it was, okay, you have very little cards in hand, but just in case you do have a PG, this shuts it offline. I think this is a flex choice. This could really be whatever you want it to be. I just like the idea of, in this format, to just say no to your opponent's Sentinels. So I'll go with grade 0s, obviously. Just starter, just on ride, draw a card. Then we played 6 crit. Now, when I first picked this up, I was debating of going to 8 crit, but after playing it today, I think 6 is fine because I run 6 draw. So obviously we play 4 draw PG, pretty standard, and then I just play 2 normal draws. To be honest, I think this is a good ratio for the deck at the moment. Being able to just get these off the damage checks or just kind of cheese these drew me into pieces, which was great because obviously I'm discarding my opponent's hand, but I also want to keep a hand. It's also just a grade 0 that I can call and just go Hanzo skill off it. So for me, 6 crit, 6 draw is fine. And then obviously 4 heals. Pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, that's the deck profile. I'll go through my rounds and how the day went for me. Basically, round 1, I went up against Vanquisher. My main reason for playing this for the event was actually Vanquisher, because I thought after playtesting so much against my teammates that Nubas had quite a good matchup against it. So we went into game 1 and I was able to win the match. Fair play to my opponent, he did not make it easy for me at all. It was a very close match. It ended up with him having 3 cards left in deck. It was very close to the wire, but because I was able to ride Jeremy Congo and just keep his hand to 4, he wasn't able to do much. He would get all these draws, but then he'd have to drop them all at the end of his turn. So the key against the Vanquisher matchup is just this card. Round 2, I went up against a teammate, my teammate Ginge, and he was playing his Pale Moon Luquier deck. It was a really good match. He's a good friend of mine, good testing partner. Unfortunately for him, he didn't know that I was playing Nuba for the event because it was something I just decided the day before. And unfortunately, obviously, since they got the hit on the Doreen, there's only so long he could shove his cards back into a soul. So I just had to be patient, kind of try and brave the attacks, and wait until he had a board. And I was able to get the full combo off on him, and he had no cards in hand and 5 damage. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to hit a heal. Round 3, went up against Vanquisher again. This time we lost. It was a very good game with my opponent, triggers back and forth. But unfortunately, he was just able to hit the crit when I wasn't able to. Round 4 was Vanquisher again, as I thought it would be. Again, another close match. I think, there's definitely some things that I could have done better, honestly. My opponent just played it very well. And yeah, it was so close to the wire again. It was just the difference between triggers. And in my final round, I got paired up against my other teammate Liam, who was playing Ultra Force Ravon for the event.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah.
He's behind the camera and recording for us. It started off as quite a fun game, but unfortunately I did sack him. I was able to get his hand down quite a lot using the combo between my grade 3s, apart from the chicken, because unfortunately we didn't get to that stage of the game. He ended up having to PG my Vanguard and ended up with 1 card in hand afterwards, and I still had an 18k column. And then I hit a draw and a crit off of the twin drive, and that 18k column became a 38k column, and he could not guard it, and unfortunately did not hit a heal.
Just for clarification to everyone, this card is the chicken.
Yeah, sorry, that might not have been too clear earlier. Then we got into top 8, and it was a really quick match, to be honest, and everyone on the team will tell you my worst matchup is Bermuda Triangle, and it always has been.
It's his weakness.
And
you've got to beat Brendan.
this time around, it was a nice surprise. It was Melody, and I think that was the deck I've had the most problems with in Standard. Unfortunately, I lost the dice roll. He was able to go first. He hit a Sonata off of the Lizalette and was just able to start smacking me really early. He hit a crit on his grade 2, hit a crit on his grade 3, which already had force 2 on his Vanguard, so I had to take a lot. By the time I rode grade 3, I only had 2 cards in hand afterwards, and I just wasn't able to keep up. Very nice guy, very nice opponent, and it was a good match. It was enjoyable to see, how quickly I got steamrolled. I'll just say, all in all, the event was great. Shout outs to my team, Team Ragnarok, and to my teammates for helping me practice and making the event so much better. I also wanted to shout out to some friends that I made, especially to Connor Sims, who was a player who actually made top 8 with Soul Saver Turbo. And anyone that knows me knows that I am a Royal main myself, so that made me really happy to see that Soul Saver was able to get to the top 8. And I just wanted to shout out his team as well, Soul Forge Vanguard. And shout out to Darkspear for running the event. It was run pretty well, and hopefully I'll try and do as well as I did at this event. I'll try and do the same at Cardiff. Thank you guys for watching.